Okay, so let's begin. Like we always do, we look at the unit objectives, and there are about 3 objectives here in this unit 11 of political parties and election. Now, important to note that political parties and elections are a vital component to the representative democracy that we have. So, in any representative democracy, like that of Papua New Guinea, Great Britain, United States, the yardstick or the measurement to measure how successful a country is, or to measure the representative democracy, is rooted in elections and political parties. So if there's no elections in any representative democracy, then there is an issue of the political system itself, meaning that a country that does not hold elections tend to be authoritarian countries, for example in North Korea and in China. So the vehicles of democracy is elections, and the medium in which a thriving representative democracy function depends on the level or how many political parties are there in the representative democracy. So all in all, elections and political parties are a vital part of any representative democratic system. Now in this unit here, there are 3 objectives here. Number 1 objective is to explain the main functions of political parties in a democratic political system. So what is the functions of a political parties? That we need to find out. Number 2 is we have to assess the relative merits of majoritarian and proportional electoral system. So here, electoral systems there are various electoral systems around the world, especially those representative democracies around the world. And the most common electoral systems or type of electoral system are the majoritarian electoral system and the proportional electoral system. So we will try and see what are their merits, what are their arguments, their justification as to or for a country to adopt a majoritarian or an proportional electoral system. Number 3 is describe how political parties and elections operate in the cultural context of Papua New Guinea. Now we've talked about culture and Papua New Guinea context. Papua New Guinea is quite different. Papua New Guinea has a lot of cultural tribes and languages. So for Papua New Guinea to adopt the best fitting election or electoral system and the political party system is very much important. So let's delve through and see if we can achieve objective number 1, which is to explain the functions of political parties. Now, if you look at page 90 and the adding political parties, one definition is a political party is groups organized to win government. Okay, so that highlight the sentence here because that gives you what the political party is. So a political party is a group of people that is organized for the purpose of winning government power by electoral and other means. In most countries, the political party is the major organizing principle of modern politics. Indeed, in most contemporary political systems, politics is clearly identified with political parties and their representatives. Political parties are sometimes confused with other groups such as pressure groups or social movements. However, 4 characteristics of political parties tend to distinguish from other groups. Now, important here is that in that sentence here, the definition is political parties are groups organized to win government. However, there are other existing groups within the political system as well. So it is important that we distinguish political parties from all these existing groups. because only then we will know the functions of the political party and why is it different from other pressure or movement or pressure groups or support movement, okay, groups that are different from what political party is. In order to understand that, we have to look at the 4 characteristics of political parties, and these are number 1 characteristics of a political party is that parties aim to exercise government power by winning office. You will identify a political party if a political party makes its intention to the public to win the electoral office and form the government. Then you will know that this is a political party. Now, other movement groups, their intention is not move to form the government. Their intention is to make a particular social agenda, bring it forward to the government, but not to win office. So that is important. A political party, number 1, aims and the sole purpose objective is to win office, political office or electoral office, constituency, and eventually forming the government. Number 2, parties are organized bodies with a formal membership. Parties are organized body with a formal membership. Okay, we have a lot of PANGO supporters, PNC supporters, not necessarily in Papua New Guinea. In the other democracies, example the United States, between the Democrats and the Republicans voters are also members of the Republican Party because they contribute financially and through other means to support the party. So that is why the second function of a political party is that it is an organized body with formal membership. And most of this formal membership comes in the form of financial support to a political party. We have in Papua New Guinea some membership. We have, for Papua New Guinea, in order for a political party to be registered, it had to ensure that there are well over about 50 members or membership. So whether we see the 50 membership contribute financially or not, that is something that we don't know, or if we do. But the idea is that a political party is a organized and a formal membership, meaning that you have to get the documents and then write your name, your address, put in 20 kina, and then sign off, and then you register to support a political party. Okay. Third, parties typically adopt a broad issue focus addressing each of the major issues of government policy. Political parties are supposed to be a link between the civil society or the society and the state. So the third point is that they typically carries on issues that is affecting the people and make those issues known to the government. All right? And number 4, to a varying degree, parties are united by shared political preference and a general ideological identity. Not so much in Papua New Guinea, but in the representative democracies in Europe and in America, there is a shared political preference, okay? Meaning that Republican voters tend to vote conservatives. Democratic voters tend to vote liberal. So there is a shared preference on the issue. Okay, we've talked about political ideology already. So when it comes to abortion, Democrats, Republicans would rather vote against abortion, while the liberal will vote for abortion. So here we have the political parties wants to bring out shared political preference and at the same time a general ideological identity. Now, ideological identity in the United States politics, you will see conservative tend to vote Republican and liberal tend to vote Democrat Party. All right. Now let's move on. Okay, so as outlined in reading 14, Political parties carry out a range of important functions, and most important are outlined below. What are these functions here? There are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions here. Number one is representation. Like we've talked about already, imagine if you have about 5 million or 11 million people, you're trying to fit 11 million people in Waigani, or yes, in the parliament. You can't do that. So the idea of representative democracy is that the 11 million people will elect a leader to represent them, depending on where they come from. So if you are from, let's say, a particular electorate, you vote for a popular candidate to come and represent you. Now, that representation of the members of parliament in Western democracy, the representations are visibly seen through their participation and where they stand in terms of what political party they are under. So political parties, in that view, provide a link between the state and the civil society. So political party, Pangu party for that matter, if we have an issue, now we have an economic issue, then the people would want to have their economic challenges and their day-to-life concern being brought to the government or the parliament. Now, who brings this up? Political party plays an important role in bringing that message across to the government. That's why they act as a vital link between the state and the civil society in terms of representation. Number two, formation and recruitment of political elites. So political parties are important in that they tend to recruit important political figures in our history. So let's say, if you are growing up in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, when you talk about Pangu Party during that time, you always relate Pangu Party to Grand Chief Sir Michael Sumare, late Grand Chief Sir Michael Sumare. Or when you talk about the People's Progressive Party, you always see the face of late Governor Sir Julius Cher. So that gives us an example of the second point here, formation and recruitment of political elites. So we tend to see our political elites, or elites in our country, coming off these political parties. So the political party gives basis for them to come out and stand as political leaders of our country. Now when you talk about Pangu Party, you don't see the face of late Grand Chief Sir Michael Sumare. You see the face of who? Our Prime Minister, James Marape. Okay? Thirdly, articulation and aggregation of interest. So political parties tend to be vocal. If you are around in 2017 election, that time Pangu Party was being led by Sembasi. Now during the time, the popular slogan was, Pangu Party brought political independence. Now in 2017, Pangu Party will bring economic independence. So that is an example of how a political party tends to articulate, meaning bring the objective and the visions of the party forward and try to aggregate this interest here. That is by telling voters that if you vote for Pangu Party, then Pangu Party will bring in economic independence. All right? So that is the example of the third point here, articulation and aggregation of interest. So if you look at the United States, Democratic Party would want to bring up abortion, or free choice argument in abortion, to legalize abortion. Why? Because a political party here, and in this third point here, the characteristics of a political party is to articulate and aggregate interest. Okay, let's move on. Number 4 theme or point, organization of government. The primary aim of political parties when they nominate candidates to contest election is to win so that they can achieve government power. So organization of political party, and like its definition, is to win government power. The sole purpose of any political party, whether it be on the left, on the right, whether it be a party that belongs to James Marape or Peter O'Neill in PNC, their sole focus is to win government. PNC won government in 2012 to 2017, or rather to 2019, and then Pangu Party from 2019 up to the present. So their sole focus is to win government. Finally, policy focus or policy formulation. Political parties formulate public policy which become part of their party's platform. Not so common in Papua New Guinea, but in many countries, Western countries, especially in Europe and the United States, is that political parties, they formulate policies. Now, Donald Trump in the United States, one of his policies under the Republican banner is to take up tough measure against illegal immigrants. So that was one of the policies, and people voted in for that policy, and now he's trying to implement that policy. So that gives you an idea of how political parties tend to formulate public policies. All right? Because there is a concern of immigration in the United States. Donald Trump ran under the banner of toughening up laws for immigration, and he, when elected, is implementing what his policies are. Okay, not so much in Papua New Guinea, because Papua New Guinea we tend to have policy overlaps, meaning that PNC was vocal about free education. When Pangu came in, Pangu is about free education. So there is no difference in public policy in terms of their association with a political party, because they tend to overlap. Okay, but not so much in the Western democracies. But the very important idea is that political party, or one characteristic is that political parties are in charge of policy formulation. Okay, all right. So let's go on. So because no parties function in the same way, and I read, it is necessary to have a scheme of classification without pretending to be definitive, following the main types of parties. So I said earlier that Papua New Guinea's political parties are supposed to formulate policies. You see that happening in the United States and Europe, and not so much in Papua New Guinea. Now, to understand this, we can look at the different types of political parties in order to understand why cases in Papua New Guinea are different from that in the United States. And the main types of party are, I think there are 3: pragmatic party, ideological party, interest party, and personal party and movement party. Now let's try and go through these main types of party one by one. Pragmatic party, and I'll read. The pragmatic party is primarily concerned with public policy that the public views as solutions to the problems. The pragmatic party gears to campaign promises, not to beliefs founded on doctrine, but to programs that it believes have the greatest appeal to the public. Many political parties in Papua New Guinea tend to adopt a pragmatic approach. So when I say that political party tends to overlap, political parties in Papua New Guinea sometimes carries this pragmatic approach or pragmatic party stance. Now, when you look at free education, education is very much an important public policy issue, regardless. Okay, whether you be Pangu, you be PNC or PPP. Education is very much critical in the development of Papua New Guinea. So, in the pragmatic sense, it is ideally important for Pangu Party, PNC Party, and other party to emphasize on education. So when they do this, political parties tend to be pragmatic in their approach. You know what pragmatic means? So for example, in reality, if you don't focus on education, there is a consequence for the society. We all want our kids, children to be educated to have a better life. So if you don't get educated, you will be missing out on the opportunity to have a better life. That is realistic. That is pragmatic. So the pragmatic approach to it is that any government must support free education. It's only when they do it for political point scoring, then you tend to ask questions like, why is political party trying to adopt the same policies, okay, by PNC and coming to Pangu Party in terms of free education? But here, political parties in Papua New Guinea tend to exhibit this kind of pragmatic approach when it comes to talking about public policy. Next is the ideological party. The ideological party emphasizes ideological purity more than the immediate attainment of power. Political doctrine is more important than electoral success. Such parties are criticized for their inflexibility. Often they put doctrine before wishes of the people. They convinced that in time voters will come around to their way of thinking. Communist and fascist parties tend to be good examples of ideological party. In China, Mao, the first president of Chinese Communist Party, Mao Zedong, he was advocating for this communist ideology when he came into power. Even in North Korea, okay, and even the current Communist Party. So in China and in North Korea and even in Russia, they exhibit this ideological party stance or party type. Meaning that political ideology, the ideology of Marxism is more important than the electoral success, and it's more important than what is happening on the ground. It's more important than the reality. It's more important than the pragmatic issues or challenges that they have in Russia or in China. So political parties tend to exhibit this ideological party type. Now you can say that to a certain extent in the United States, where the Republican on the right and the Democrat on the left. So most of their policies is at first be centered around the ideological arguments in the society. The other is the interest groups or interest party. The interest party is a group of people with a common interest. However, the interest groups converts into a political party that runs candidates and attempts to obtain power. Now, in the 1950s and 60s in Papua New Guinea, we have interest groups that were registered as political parties. One, for example, is the Papua Besana movement, led by or advocated by Josephine Abijah. So their sole aim is to get into power, okay, and pursue the agenda of the Papua Besana. So this exhibit this interest party, okay, or in East New Britain, the Mataungan Association, they registered a political party, or the secessionist movements on the island of Bougainville. So the political parties that contested offices during that time were very much interest party, but pursuing a certain interest. And most of these interests tend to revolve around, in our country, revolve around the self-determination theme. Okay, or self-determination, meaning that they wanted to get independence. That was what the islands of Bougainville and the Papua Besana movement were arguing for, political or the economical independence or economical aspect of it, like the Mataungan Association. However, political parties tend to exhibit this type, okay, interest. And then you have the personality party is founded around a single influential political party leader. You can say that in Papua New Guinea, Pangu party during the 1960s, 70s exhibit some form of this personality party, or we can say that Papua New Guinea tends to also exhibit this type of personality party. So here, what I'm trying to say is that no one type fits all. So Papua New Guinea political parties can exhibit some form of all these types put together. An example is the pragmatic type and the personal party type. For example, in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, Pangu party is always associated with late Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare. Now, in the current form, Pangu party, when you see or hear or talk about Pangu party, who do you see first? Who comes to your mind? The Prime Minister, James Marape. When you see James Marape, you see the Pangu party. So this is an example of the type of party in Papua New Guinea, or party politics in Papua New Guinea. It resonates and revolves around a person. When you see Peter O'Neill, you automatically see PNC. Okay, that's an example. And lastly is the movement party. It's a political movement that involves into a party apparatus. Okay, it's like interest groups, but the sole purpose of a political movement is to gain power. Is to gain power with a specific agenda in mind. So movement party, for that matter, is a secessionist movement on the island of Bougainville in the 1970s, 78 coming to, or 73, sorry. It gives you this type of party, okay? Their sole purpose is to establish independence. Or the West Papua Freedom Movement. Okay, this is a political party. It revolves around the freedom, or revolves around a movement trying to seek independence from Indonesia. All right, so now we see political parties. Let's look at elections. Elections are a device for filling a political office through the choice of a society. Okay, so elections, without elections, we cannot have a, let's say, in Papua New Guinea, without elections, you cannot have a government. So government is very much associated with elections or government formation. And already an election is a device for filling in an office of power through choices made by a legitimately designated body of people, the electorate. So the electorate chooses the representative through the process of election. In a liberal democratic system, elections provided the main vehicle through which representation are chosen. Highlight this word here, the second sentence. This is very important. So elections may be either democratic or non-democratic. Democratic elections tend to be conducted according to the following principles: universal adult suffrage. Every adult has the right to vote, meaning that if you are 18 and above, you have the right to vote. One person, one vote, meaning that every individual has a right to one vote. depending on the structure of vote, meaning that we have LPV 1, 2, 3. If you do not know, the 1, 2, 3 constitute one vote. So on that principle of one person, one vote, and each adult can only vote, one vote, one value, all votes are equal. Meaning that my vote is the same vote that you all seated here will cast. So that's the same value. There is no difference. If Prime Minister James Marape wants to vote, his vote does not have a greater value than someone or you and I sitting here. So that value of vote is constant, or equal, sorry. The next is the secret ballot. Votes are anonymous and, secret ballot, meaning that when you cast your vote, that vote is being cast in secrecy, meaning that you should not tell, or Mary should not tell John that she voted for candidate X. Okay, so that's the idea of what secret ballot is. Now, why is that? Because that act alone fosters that freedom of expression, individual expression, and so that you are not being coerced into voting a particular leader. So that's the importance of secret ballot. Electoral choice, lastly, electoral choice offered by competition between both candidates and political parties. So electoral choices are offered by competition between both candidates and political parties. So candidates and political parties in Papua New Guinea elections are going around campaigning for 1, 2, and 3. So this is what is trying to say here. Electoral choices offered by competition. So political parties and candidates are competing to secure your one vote. All right? Now, on the other hand, the non-democratic election is one that exhibits any of the following features. The right to vote is restricted on the grounds as property ownership, gender, education, or racial origin. The size of electorates varies significantly. Voters are subject to pressure, intimidation, and coercion. So in a non-democratic election, you will see the universal suffrage, one person, one vote, one value, the secret ballot, and even electoral choice offered by competition do not exist. If these things are not existing in an election, then that is a non-democratic election. Now let's look at the common ways of distinguishing between the electoral system on the basis of how they convert votes into seats. The two main types of electoral systems are described below: the majoritarian electoral system and the proportional electoral system. And what is a majoritarian electoral system? A majoritarian electoral system which enables larger parties to win a significantly higher proportion of seats than proportion of votes they gain in election. This increases the chance of a single party gaining a parliamentary majority and being able to govern on its own. You can read that, but I'll give you an example of what majoritarian system means. Majoritarian system means that a majority voted for a particular leader. Okay, straightforward. So we have been using the majoritarian system, or the system in Papua New Guinea. Now we think that there are different types, there are two types of system we've been using in Papua New Guinea. No, we've been using this majoritarian system. Now majoritarian system means that when you an electorate overwhelmingly voted for the members of parliament. So normally, the LPV system ensures that a candidate will win an electorate if he reaches 50+1. Why is that important? The 50+1 means that the candidate has overwhelming support of 50% of the population or eligible voters in the electorate. That is the majoritarian way or the majoritarian system. We have been using the majoritarian system after 1973, which is called the plural voting system, the first past the post, one man, one vote. Now the problem about one man, one vote is that from 1973 to 1999, the one man, one vote did not reach the majoritarian principle. All right? So absence of this kind of situation, candidates were depending mostly on their base votes, ethnic vote. So if your tribal or house line, in that matter, have enough population to vote you into the office, then you will concentrate on your house line to get into office. So when you do that, you do not ideally represent the whole electorate. You only represent the house line that were voting you into the office. Now that goes against the majoritarian principle. Majoritarian principle means that your house line plus other minority groups in the electorate should vote you in. So when that happens, then you are fulfilling this majoritarian principle. So the first past the post did not achieve that. That is why they replaced it with the LPV system, and the LPV system now you need 50% plus 1. The 50% plus 1 inserted in the LPV voting system is to ensure this majoritarian principle. That's why you have 50 plus 1. So Papua New Guinea uses the majoritarian system. Okay, and differently in the proportional system, which guarantees an equal or at least more equal relationship between states, seats and voters. In pure system of proportional representation, a party that gains 40% of the votes will win exactly 40% of the available seats in parliament. Let's say there are 10 seats in parliament. If the political party wins 50% of the votes, then 5 seats is allocated to that political party. Okay? It's different from the majoritarian system in such a way that voters now tend to choose the number of seats in parliament. In majoritarian system, the number of seats in parliament are already decided. You are to vote in the leader to occupy that seat. But in a proportional setting, you will have to vote for the party, okay, political party. So imagine if political party wins, let's say 50% of the votes, that 50% of the votes is translated to, let's say, the 50% of the seat being won by the political party. And in our example, if there's 10 seats in parliament and the political party wins 50% of the voting population, then the political party will be given that 5 seats in parliament. That is why in countries like Japan, to a certain extent the United States, but Japan, they vote for the candidate and the party. So you have party seats and the candidate seats. Okay? So they have one vote. However, they vote for, their one vote is equally distributed to the party and the seats. All right? That's why it's proportional system. Okay, let's move on. Can I read? Page 95, second paragraph or second sentence. Another important issue to consider with regard to election is whether or not elections perform an effective role in selecting genuine representation of the people. This is an important issue, as while elections decide who will govern, they do not undermine how a representative will govern. The debate centers around two different views of representation. The two different views of representation in elections are independent representative and delegate. So the first view is that elected representatives are independent of their electorates. On this view, people elect representatives because they are believed to possess a good deal of knowledge and expertise. Therefore, the representatives should be left to govern as they see fit, using their own discretion. And the next one, delegate. The second view is that elected representatives are delegates of the electorate and should not perform independently of the wishes of their constituents or the voters. On the other view, the representative is elected to transmit the demands, wishes, and grievances of the electorate and should not use their own discretion in making decisions. So first view, why do we elect representatives? We elect representatives on the floor of parliament to represent our views. Here, independent view, and that is the first view, where we believe that he or she is the right candidate to represent us on the floor of parliament. So if you think a bus driver can represent you on the floor of parliament, then you vote for him because you think or you see fit that he is the right person to represent you. Okay, that's one view of voting or electing someone. And the other view is delegate. Now this view is not so much being held in Papua New Guinea, but it's very much being tied to most of the Western democracy in the United States and Europe. So the second view is that the representatives are only there to delegate responsibilities, and that is to make laws on the floor of parliament. Okay, that is an example of it. So depending on those two views, we in Papua New Guinea tend to follow the independent view. And at the back of our mind, we want economical freedom and wealth. Upon that premise, we tend to vote people or our leaders. Now, when our leaders go into parliament, they are subjected to deliver on these demands. So we don't elect them because they've been a good medical practitioner or they've been good leaders in Papua New Guinea. We tend to elect leaders because they can bring back goods and services. So that follows this independent representative view. Now let's look at political parties and elections in Papua New Guinea. So in Papua New Guinea, Ben Riley examines the political parties in Papua New Guinea, and that is written in Philippines, and his central argument is that Papua New Guinea is one of the most successful democracies in the world. Why is that? Papua New Guinea since 1964 or after 1973, 1977 elections have been successfully electing governments. That is why Ben Riley has been saying that we have been a successful democracy. So if you use election as the yardstick to measure democracy, then Papua New Guinea fares very well in terms of checking all the checkbox of democracy through elections. But that is not the case if you look at the micro lens in terms of elections and when it comes to stability. But that is another discussion. But here, Riley has argued that Papua New Guinea tends to uphold elections since 1977. And the other thing is that Papua New Guinea's political system actually behaves according to the idea that the executive is responsible to the legislature and is dependent upon the legislature's support for its continuation in office. Now that sentence alone gives you or tells you about, in Papua New Guinea, executive government is voted through the legislature. And since 1977, Papua New Guinea has always elected Prime Minister on the floor of Parliament. However, Riley also argues that Papua New Guinea has a weak and declining party system. Riley argued that Papua New Guinea's party system is unstable. We have, not until 2002, where you have a lot of political parties appearing and disappearing in Papua New Guinea's political system. Up until 2002, the National Alliance through Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare, PNC through Peter O'Neill have survived 2 terms in government, and now Pangu Party under James Marape. So here, no government since independence has survived as elected for full parliamentary term, but that is to be corrected as up until 2002. Secondly, fragmented, there were 22 registered parties prior to the 1997 election. Be expected given Papua New Guinea is one of the most diverse nations with more than 800 languages. So prior to 1997 elections, there were about 22 registered parties. Now, having a lot of political parties does not help in our political system as well. So the majoritarian system that we've talked about, a majoritarian system only promotes limited number of political parties. And if you have an extension of political parties, then you have an electoral system that is not living up to its expectation by producing limited number of political parties. Usually in proportional electoral system, proportional voting system is built in such a way that it ensures and it fits well with a lot of parties. They call it the multi-party system, but not so in a two-party system. So having fragmented here, meaning that having a lot of political party in Papua New Guinea is also an hindrance to the development of political parties in our country. And highly personalized, parties tend to operate as parliamentary factions based on dominant personalities rather than coherent, broad-based vehicles for translating public preferences into government policies. Here, again, you look at political parties are highly personalized. You look at PNC, you see Peter O'Neill, you look at Pangu, you see James Marape, but if you read in the 80s, 70s, 80s, you see late Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare. So that's what is meant by highly personalized. Increasingly irrelevant, the largest party at 1992-1997 elections are comprised of independents who had more than 50% of the votes. This is a concern, not so much after 2002, but from 1977 to 2002, there were concerns of having high number of independents that won seats. Now, when there is independent candidates, meaning seats in office, majority of independent candidates, then that poses a question to how strong the political party system is. Why is the independent candidates opting to stand as independents and not in a political party system? So that is one issue that Papua New Guinea has to face with, is to build a political party that we have, the political parties will consume most of these independent candidates. So having more independent candidates does not do good for the development of political parties in Papua New Guinea. So that's what he is trying to say here. And let's look at page 97. According to Riley, the reasons why candidates claim a party endorsement. This is a good question. Why do political parties claim endorsement? Or why candidates claim party endorsements? Why do they always claim party endorsements? And there are 3 reasons here. Number one is they're trying to align themselves with the prestige of a major figure such as Somare or Winti. So during Okay, so let me give you an example. Now, in the next election, depending on how popular Pangu Party is, a lot of candidates would want to go under the banner of Pangu Party. Why? With the hope of Pangu Party forming the government, and also in the hope of they can have, be selected as ministers, or have given special preferences and privileges under the Pangu Party government. So that is one reason why most of the candidates like to align themselves with the incumbent party in power. Number two is to assess party resources such as nomination fees, campaign expenses, budgets, t-shirts, and other campaign materials. Now, during elections, campaign materials, fundings, candidates who stands independent tend to lose on funding and extra funding and resources to contest in the election. So that's why having to have a party endorsement is important to give that added advantage to the intending candidate. And number three is to distinguish themselves from non-endorsed candidates in situations where there is large number of candidates. If there's a lot of candidates, and one way to distinguish them is through party endorsements. So here that concludes our lecture on Unit 11. Now, recapping, so we looked at our objectives here and we tried to discuss, now we know the main functions of parties, political parties in democratic political system. We look at the merits of majoritarian and proportional. In a majoritarian system, the majoritarian electoral system advocate for majority representation. And we have in Papua New Guinea the reason why we have 50+1. And a majoritarian electoral system commonly advocate for or commonly establish a limited number of political parties in the political system. In a proportional electoral system, it advocates for a multi-party system. Now in Papua New Guinea is quite different, exhibit a different, due to its cultural composition, political parties exhibit differently in comparing to other democracies. Political parties in Papua New Guinea tend to follow a pragmatic approach, personalized, number one, and pragmatic approach. That is important to remember. The type of political parties in Papua New Guinea exhibit the personalized and pragmatic approach. With that, that concludes our lecture for today, and we'll continue next week. Class dismissed.